Hello, everyone. Welcome to C-Level Chats, hosted by Liftr Insights. Today, I'm joined by Allison Boen, president of Alcatex. Allison, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Absolutely.
exciting. So, yes, I am the president and co founder of Alcatex Data Center Design and Services. We've been building and designing data centers for 30 years, celebrated our 30th in March. My joke is back when we were measuring data centers in square foot and not megawatt or gigawatt. So, yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you. Today, everybody, we're going to talk a lot about immersion technology and the partnerships between a couple key chip players, Allison's role, and then, of course, Shell and the technology. Lots of questions around it in terms of the ROI and whether that's performance, environmental, or real estate, from a real estate square footage standpoint. We're asked a lot given the fact that we enumerate the data sets around these chip providers and hyperscalers. So we thought this would be a fantastic, quick 101 just for everybody to kind of benefit about this emerging topic. So I'm going to go to the first slide just real quick, just to kind of set the stage here. This is no surprise, but the actual, you know, this is the United States kind of continuous, but the explosion of the accelerator market. In this particular case, we'd used Hopper and Blackwell of NVIDIA, excuse me, just because they took it by storm, and just to show the importance of that. It's not an F, it's a win. A lot of you know that, but it's good to see an illustration of the explosion. And then we also looked into our data because we thought this would be interesting as a handoff to Allison and the Shell ecosystem, along with the integrators and the other chip providers and Allison's work, to show that last quarter, that AMD seems to be making the biggest chip away, no pun intended, into the actual NVIDIA market share. So that's important on a lot of fronts. Number one, so there's more equilibrium in the market, but it's also, I think, is a great way to segue into this overall ecosystem that's being built, as AMD is part of that. And then I think, Allison, this is a really good time for you to kind of walk through the history, just as a good 101, if you will, to get us to some more detailed conversation of the deployment of hybrid liquid and the overall project and how it stands today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I always like to, when I talk about the history, I don't want to go all the way back to, its first Cray computers, history, because it is not new technology. But I think from my perspective, my history with it started in 2014. Obviously, it was an excellent way for the crypto community to cool their chips with overclocking. But right now, what we're obviously dealing with is the influx of AI and the high chip densities that happened. I think it was a big bang moment. Shell, who I act as their brand ambassador for their all their liquid cooling fluids, which are their single phase immersion fluid as well as their DLC fluid. So, but I love, and this is where you got to visit us last week for our lunch and learn there at the Shell Data Hall in Katy, Texas. And that is a 7 megawatt data hall. They were effectively out of power. They could not expand any further. And so the hybrid environment that Shell has, like you're looking at here, where with traditional air, they were hovering between 1.6 and 2.5. PUE, they were about 30 kW per rack, and then they brought in direct to chip, obviously, solutions that improved their PUE, to a really good amount, to 1.2. And they were running, like they said, 62 kW there, you can see. And then they decided to go ahead and go all in on the immersion. And that is with one of our trusted partners, GRC, Green Revolution Cooling. And so now that is running full production, 100 kW per rack there, and that equates to 2 megawatt of the overall 7 megawatt that they're doing. And it's really fun to hear some of the numbers that they're running 9 petaflops in the tanks there on site. And the data hall itself is only around 20 petaflops. So literally, they're running half of their production environment in single phase immersion cooling fluid, and it's really exciting to see. And I know you got to witness that.
Yeah, I did, and I will tell you, it was phenomenal because you actually, when you went into the actual the deployment area, you walked past. Let's call it the old school. I know it's not necessarily that old, but you couldn't hear yourself talk. Or you were 5 feet from somebody. It was hard to hear. Then the next thing everything's just quiet and it's running. At a whole different level. So it was just those little things that just tell everything about the story. Um, what, in your opinion, from an environmental performance or square footage, pound for pound, if you were a private equity person looking at build versus buy, retrofitting, or a ESG, or looking for performance, can you rank those in terms of what's driving this most right now, or would you just wrap them all up and just say that it makes the solution? That's what makes the solution ROI.
Yeah, really, obviously, it really doesn't matter what I say because what oh, I'm going to go ahead and talk about OCP real quick because honestly, it's very, very close to my heart. The TCO, total cost of ownership work stream, which started 2 years ago. And I was leading at the time. I've moved over to community outreach now, right? But that is beyond, it's in the middle of its beta testing phase. And literally, it's one of those things that you almost have to have that tool um, to believe it. It is really the TCO, the total cost of ownership from OPEX and CapEx perspective is really just one of those things that we could just say all day long. And that's one of the reasons why OCP took it under their wing to create this tool, agnostic, born out of all of the infrastructure environment, whether it's fluid, whether it's tank, whether it's IT, you have Supermicro, you have a lot of fluid providers participating. Then you have infrastructure, as in Schneider and Vertiv, all participating. You can go to whatever region, you can plug in whatever you want because the TCO tool really is what people want to see now. And we wanted to take it away from it being a marketing tool to really show you the advantages. They always start with, isn't that expensive to just deploy? Isn't that more expensive? No, actually, the answer is just no. But then you need to be able to back it up. And I love OCP for that reason.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go next. From a competition standpoint, right? So let's get to TCO. We kind of bundled all those in, taking those considerations, right? The environmental piece, the real estate and performance, just the capex and then opex. What's the competition? If you had to rank the competition right now?
Well, as far as the competition goes, I mean, I don't like to. I love all the technology. I mean, I still air's not going away, right? And not everyone is a potential client for immersion cooling. So, we talk about direct to chip, that thing you were talking about when you walk in, it's so loud. I call it when I walk by that one particular aisle and like that's the screaming aisle. I mean, it literally is like screaming at you. So think about an entire data hall like that. So whenever I think there's levels. I think it's just like anything else that this is going to be what might fit one's needs. This is maybe what's going to fit another. I obviously, if you want a future proof, which is what a lot of people are looking at doing, that's why you cannot deny the benefits of single phase immersion cooling. So I'm gonna always, stand by immersion cooling. It's kind of now, it feels like I'm in a tank right now. I'm swimming in a tank. Look behind me. But honestly, I just really feel like it's. I wanna make sure that I leave the data center after 30 years. I'm gonna be in it for many more, I hope. But I want to leave it better than I found it, and that's why I truly believe in immersion cooling technology.
Yeah. So let's use that as a nice segue into a recent announcement. Talked about the Intel certification.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's not. It's really, almost no way to make it as great as it is, and just with my mere words. It has been a collaboration with Intel and Shell, Supermicro, 2 years in the making. And Intel, and they've been doing the hard work, just kind of silently plugging away at this. And so that this first certified immersion cooling fluid that Shell achieved the certification of for full warranty with an Intel chip is pivotal. Like it's, you can say it, but it really is just something that the entire community Thousands of people are devoted to the immersion group. I've been personally since 2018, so that's like 6 years of watching this evolve. And you can talk about the TCO all day, but if you have no warranty to back it up, then sometimes that becomes obviously a problem. So it had to happen. This is so great for the industry, so great for the future of immersion cooling. So
Yeah, so that took, obviously comes with trials and tribulations. Anytime that you take a technology like this and apply it to such a hyperscaled environment. So you said around 2018 to get, we're in 2025. Intel, went out on the limb there, took it
mm,
on the chin a little bit. But the bottom line is, they got to where they are, and it validates a lot of things. What does that ecosystem look like? What's the end goal in terms of, and maybe not the end goal. Let's talk 36 months, perhaps, in terms of what does an ecosystem build out look like? Certifications, preferred partners, just kind of give an idea of what that landscape looks like if you were the part, building the revenue stream or the alliance program for this technology at Shell.
obviously we this was certified with Supermicro and with the Intel chip, but truly those partnerships are just evolving every day to where at the end of the day this was born out of the Open Compute project, the Intel Shell collaboration, again years in the making. So you will see if you get to attend the OCP summit in October. Actually, there's a very big presentation that will be by Intel and Shell at that event, and they're going to really go deep into how they got there, what we had to do to accomplish this. The word open is in Open Compute, so they want to share good, bad, and ugly, right, of how they got here, because again there is things on in the future that I everybody hears, and I don't want to share things that I don't 100% know, that just make us have to start looking at immersion cooling more and more as we even get into 2027, which is a mere year and a half away, that are going to force us to look at immersion cooling technology.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify for the attendees, the 2027 deadline marks what actual decision?
About just certain chip configurations that will be released that I've heard around Q1 of 2027.
Right.
Kind of change the architecture, change the way we're going to have to look at this, and definitely depending, not everybody, but and not every situation, but for a
Right.
lot of I know asterisk asterisk asterisk
Right.
to where we're going to have to cool this, how we're going to have to cool this. So more to come. A second LinkedIn Live, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, duly noted. These are just the kind of questions that we're getting, and they're obvious
Yeah.
questions. Whether you're talking to someone in a business development or actually the one deploying, or supply chain folks that are more curious, let's say, And I think you're making the points of why it's can't be denied at this point. It's just does it fit you, and does it fit your actual solutions needs? I want to go back to geography a little bit. We didn't touch on it as much as I'd liked. Is there a particular demand or interest level at a from a global perspective, meaning continent, countries, or even maybe down to solution need? Can you just talk about that? Like if you were to kind of map out the addressable market from a geographic and a solutions need, expand on that a bit.
Well, obviously North America is one of the largest growing data AI data center land. Even our president is talking about it. Gosh, you never heard so much out of the United States government about data centers in my life, right? In 30 years. And so we know that, if we're going to deploy and become this AI leader, there's going to be scenarios where we're going to need to just do more than blow air, right? And so obviously there's a lot of deployments for directed chip technology out there, which is great. Europe is obviously got a stronghold as well with heat reuse opportunities and some of the things that they're doing. And of course, immersion cooling is an excellent source for heat reuse. We're seeing a lot of Asia. We're seeing a lot of even really great projects in Dubai. So it's exciting to see it globally, and finally take notice for plethora of different reasons. So
Yeah. I want to. We just got a question in that I think is a great question. Um, the question is coming actually from somebody that we know here: is single phase as efficient as direct to chip? Do you need very high mass flows to reach the same HCCs?
Mhm. So it's very efficient. And I think that to say it's more efficient would be the fact that you do not need any outside air cooling to do immersion, right? You can do it in a warehouse. You can do it in a, it doesn't matter, factory floor. You can accomplish it. If you want to have comfort air for technicians, that's really all we need. But you really direct to chip still requires 30% air to cool. You can't just do it with the DLC. So again, I think it's, what do they say, different strokes for different folks. But really, if you're going to future proof your data center, and bringing liquids in is first of all the first thing you have to address. And this is why we really like the idea of what Shell has done is kind of they have a little bit of everything on their data hall floor. um, you got to see that time lapse video where they deployed it in real
I was
time.
going to ask you about this to expand on
Yeah.
it a bit
Hmm.
because I think that's accessible or something that can
Yeah.
be shared.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt, but that's exactly where I was
No.
going to go next. Is that video that was shared with us?
Yeah, and actually, that's the first time I saw it, and I was like, "Where is this been?" It is just so pivotal to watch the deployment of the GRC tanks on the data hall floor during production. They didn't shut that data center down. Are you kidding? They can't.
Right.
So, just something as seamless. So it can, has, will continue to be done. And we usually tell people, really, truly, if you want to set yourself up for the future, you know we really suggest that people do a pilot, and we don't call it you know a POC anymore because it's already proved itself out. Do your own pilot on your own data hall. It's really the best way to move forward, and again, it's future proof. We've seen a lot of these tanks and fluid be reused after 7 years of IT running in it. They come, they clean the fluid, they repurpose the fluid, put it back in, and run new IT equipment after 7 years. So how can you deny that when you can continue to reuse? Can we say the same thing about a DLC rack with manifolds? I don't know.
Well, I think you kind of said that, or
Oh, not
you
me.
gave your thought. You gave your thought about it. So I want to talk about just the human capital piece of this. Have you witnessed a skill set or a different change that's actually required? Because that's the other question here. When you go, anytime you have a timeline of technology over this amount of time and this impact, there's money, there's real estate, and then there's the human capital piece. Has that been something that's been developed internally for this, or is there new skill sets that have to come from the outside?
No. I mean, I think just they pivot a little, and I've been into multiple data halls, full production, at scale immersion cooling, and the team that runs it are just some really sharp young men, and they just are like, we don't spill it. If we do, we have a cleanup kit. I mean, like there's so much simplicity into it. Sometimes we can get in our own head, right? And there's gantry systems, so you follow different protocols, you follow MOPs and SOPs just like you do with anything else, right? So but relatively it is just such a simple, and training is no problem. I mean, believe me. And by the way, you heard the lead screamer in the data hall. Some of that you don't even, like you said, you don't even need noise protection in a data hall that is full immersion. It's just quiet. So yeah, maybe there's a little learning curve, but it's super simple.
Right, right. Absolutely, and yeah, no, you needed ear protection in some of that, so that's good. Yeah, no, the immersion you do not. I want to go back to the OCP just a little bit because I think that's an educational piece, and it does evoke. From my research, it's starting to bring out more and more questions, especially around the TCO. Everyone wants to challenge the TCO model because everyone has an input and an opinion, and that goes with any type of business that I know of, especially if you're passionate about it or you've been involved in it. There's going to be pundits. There's going to be people that adopt it faster than others. Is that you've talked about the OCP? What is the next? Do they have another type of formulaic or standards body that's going to come around this? in a particular time period?
Oh yeah. So that there's again multiple tend a monthly call and you kind of get like a cliff notes versions of everything that's going on, but you have the immersion liaison group that is actively working with every government body from IEEE to UL never misses a beat. Every Uptime Institute, we have a lot of participants for that. The Liquid Cooling Coalition out of Washington, D.C. So there's truly so many different entities now. That call is really interesting if you want to really hear what's going on. And that one's led by a couple of amazing people. But really, I usually say start with attending the monthly calls, the OCP immersion monthly call, because again, every level of what is going on, whether it's on the IT side or the fluid side or the tank side or the, as you're saying, how are we going to set the standardization for this? That's probably whenever I explain what OCP is about, is that's what I say. They are setting the standards of how we look at the next generation of immersion cooling. That's literally in a nutshell what they do.
Gotcha. And this one, I really like the interaction here. Another question that just came in as you were talking: the what about the weight increase for immersion cooling? Is it compatible with air cooling? And how do you address that? And I think this gets back to what I was asking. We get asked from like private equity, build, buy, retrofit, you know, the square footage, the poundage, so forth. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no issues whatsoever. If you saw it on a raised floor,
Yeah,
so yourself,
I
how many
did.
tanks? There's 8 tanks there on a raised floor, and if I'm sure there's probably some different type of pedestals there that are maybe increasing, but it's no, it's actually it's funny you said compared to air. So compared to air, the obviously there it's but it's heavier, but it does not affect the floor. It does not affect anything. The way that it's spread out. Just think about the weight. And we're talking 4,000 pounds, fully populated. One of those tanks, a 42U tank, with fluid and equipment, runs about 4,000 pounds. Okay, but I don't know if you've been in data centers. Direct to chip racks are not light either, right? DLC racks are not light. Neither, I mean, there's a lot of heavy stuff, and you just make accommodations in the data hall. Some of these are on slab floor, right? But even you yourself saw on raised floor, and there was no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, what I saw, and I was asking someone from the one of the integrators and shell engineers that were there. It was 6 fully loaded racks that they said was equivalent to, and this was give or take the a power requirement maybe in a rack. So give or take, kind of 10ish% of one of the tanks. So if you kind of put that into perspective,
Yeah.
it's not a net loss. You would think at all, given what you're achieving,
And there's
and, and
there's
and definitely not as loud. That's for sure.
yeah. Well, if anybody wants to know any more additional information about the engineering, feel free to reach out to me, because these are legitimate questions and people need to understand. But the bottom line of the answer is no. It doesn't impact the weight, the floor weight at all.
Gotcha. Back to a future planning. We talked about the OCP involvement. We know that certifications. We've talked about the partnership ecosystem. We've talked about this timeline over traditional air, single phased. What about when we get into the adoption? And again, this is a question that came in of how do you go about? Um, it's not a POC, but how do you get into a beta, or how do you talk the person that's cutting the check for this that it's worthwhile? Are you guys, how involved is the ecosystem in this process? Because I know when I was there that we were touring, some of the people there were actually doing research to go back and make the business case, right? Because they got to work it up the food chain. What advice can you give there if you actually need to get your hands on it? And I say that jokingly because I actually put my hand actually in the tank to get oil on it. So or lubricant. So what would you recommend to somebody that's trying to get this off the ground, or go get like you said, to go get this beta going in their facility?
Yeah, obviously, I come out of the infrastructure side of things, and I would always say, oh, just we're going to build and design a data center, and I never really cared about the IT side of things, right? I didn't care. We're going to blow air. You told me how much air and where you're going to blow it at, right? Now we start with the IT. So this is again going back to the Intel certification and working with different providers such as Supermicro and Penguin and Unicom Engineering and all the ones that are heavily dedicated to this technology, right? So we start there, and then obviously, if anybody ever wants to see it in person, we will open up our doors. They've had over 1,000 people so far this year tour the Shell Data Hall. That's how dedicated they are to this technology. They encourage people to take pictures, right, Tab? You did. So really, truly seeing it, and then we have recommendations of what we believe is a good partnership, and we have partner programs within Shell. We can make references to you, but then also I want you to look at the TOC. TCO, total cost of ownership for OCP, because that's what the check writers do care about. You're right. So if you're going to future proof your design, it's it is absolutely something that will make the case for you. The TCO tool from OCP.
Okay, and we do have one more question, and then I have a couple of closing comments. So this is good. I mean, we don't have time, unfortunately, to get to all of them, but this is going to be a very high level, and I'm not sure how much you can expand on this. I know there's some info, but any idea if when NVIDIA and/or AMD will provide warranties on their GPUs if immersed?
Well, good question, and NVIDIA says one thing and does another, right? So they actually, it's been about a year ago that we know that they put out an advertisement to actually have a team for single phase immersion cooling within the NVIDIA, um, you know, world, right? They actually brought in a whole team dedicated to single phase immersion. And I will say, you heard our team tell you we've been working with NVIDIA for about a year. And so I would say, by the end of the year, maybe there might be some cool announcements, but you didn't hear that from me. So
that's why I said I wasn't sure how far you wanted to go with that. But,
yeah.
but that question that came in is another one, right? I mean, it's just not Intel made a milestone, but we know that AMD's involved in it, and so you're only going to have other questions about other providers. So it's just a matter of time. And I want to give you an opportunity real quickly as we close, just to let people know how they can get to tour that data hall. I experienced it. It's set up in such a way that you get to see that timeline of traditional, single to immersed, and it's just everything from the noise to the environment alone gives you a good idea. And then you kind of put the numbers, right? It becomes modeling, and then it becomes really past proof of concept and into beta. So let people know how they can do that, and then also like you to plug your involvement with OCP and the women's leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Just shoot me an email, AllisonB@Alcatex.com. We will roll out the red carpet. We will bring you lunch. So they really, covet people to come in there and look at it and ask the hard questions and see it with your. It's one of those things you just have to see to really understand. And as far as OCP, get involved if you have any interest whatsoever. I always say I sat for 2 years on calls and didn't say a word. I know you probably can't believe that, but anyway, it really is an important time. And also, I'm part of the Women of OCP, so we've done some great things. We're going to be doing some great things this year again, and I'm just really proud to be a part of these trailblazers. And you've just got people, masterminds of the industry. Literally, that's the way I say it. Devoted to this technology, and so you can't go wrong.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And everybody, all the attendees, thank you so much for just following and being involved. We're going to have many more C-level chats by Liftr Insights. And Allison, you contributed a lot today. So thank you, and you guys have a great week.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.